As you can see behind us, we have got two fractions, one supporting the drag queens coming in, and we've got another fraction from Birmingham who have travelled down to oppose the drag queens teaching our children in the pub behind us, the Honour Rock pub. This is what modern day Britain has become, where people take to the streets to protest for their rights. Welcome to Britain, 2023.
What is radical gender theory doing in our schools? Why is RSE being taught 3 and up? Why is Drag Story UK in our British boozers? Why do children need to be exposed to that? It makes no sense. It is an agenda, and the agenda is being exposed.
Behind us you could see the crowd is growing by the minute, and what we've got is two sides. We've got people that was against the COVID vaccination on the left side of the street against the drag queens. We've also got some other activists where they're saying it's racism against the drag queens. So we've got a lot of people on the left side that have come down, turning point, have turned out against the drag queens. We've also got some known football hooligans that have turned out against the drag queens. But when you look at the crowd, the people that are for the drag queen within the community are much more bigger crowd and a much more aggressive crowd than the crowd on the left. So what does that leave us to say? There is more people that believe that the drag queen should be allowed to be reading storybooks and teaching young children.
Tom, thank you very much for joining me.
Hello, nice to be here.
So-
This isn't the first conversation about appropriate behaviour that I've had with a man in a collar, so I'm looking forward to...
Interesting. I won't get into that. But what I will ask you is, do you think it's appropriate for drag acts to be performed in front of children?
Well, first of all, it's important for me to say, because I have made a defence of drag queen story art on this channel and others in recent times, on the basis that drag queen story time in the UK, in the instances that I've seen it, is not a striptease style burlesque show. That's a different conversation from the Kaba Baba Rave conversation that's in the news today, which I think is what we're talking about. So I just want to make that clear, they are slightly different. I
wouldn't recognise in what way the difference, so that might be...
Well, a striptease burlesque show, which is what the Kaba Baba Rave has, the videos that you've seen of people doing the splits and doing rope work and stuff, that's different from although I couldn't think of anything worse than reading to children, but if I were to sit and read books to a kid in an acceptable dress, that's a different type of show, right? I think there's a valid discussion about what's appropriate for young children in a liberal society, but we also have a society where parental discretion is a factor when it comes to whether or not their kids will listen to gangster rap, or whether they're allowed to swear in the house, or watch 18-rated movies, or drink at a family wedding. And I think that for these mums who are enjoying a cabaret show that they can take their babies to and have them present, while it's okay to have a conversation about whether or not that's appropriate, there's been a quantum leap to this makes me feel uneasy and it's inappropriate to the language of this is grooming, this is paedophilia, this is child abuse. And that's the part of it that concerns me.
Okay, I'm with you. So parents do have a lot of responsibility. I agree with you on that. Society as a whole also has a bit of a responsibility there. But to the question of is this grooming, is this paedophilia, I think people would ask, well, what is the motivation? Why are these burlesque-style, strip-style acts being performed in front of children? I mean, we could say parents shouldn't take them there, but why are they happening in the first place? Why would the performers want to do that?
Well, careful not to speak on behalf of young mothers, but I'm aware that a lot of the mums attending that Kaba Baba rave are sick of reading the wheels on the bus to their kids. You know, they've been locked up for 2 years because of a pandemic. They were gestating for 9 months. They want to go out and have a drink with their fellow mums during the day when they don't have to hire a babysitter and watch the type of shows they used to watch before they had a baby. So I can understand why a 20 or 30 something mum would enjoy the show and would think this is something that isn't going to have a terrible, long-lasting traumatic effect on a baby who doesn't actually have a clue what it is that they're watching. You know, I know some of the performers that are involved in this particular show, and I'm worried about the hyperbole of suspicion around their intentions. What could they possibly want to do? They're performers. They enjoy performing. You know, I'm sure you would sympathise with this, that there are some people on the progressive left for whom it sticks in their craw to condemn the death threats that J.K. Rowling faces. They just can't bring themselves to condemn those death threats. I don't struggle to condemn death threats, and I condemn the death threats against these performers from people that are calling them paedophiles and groomers. Would you be comfortable condemning that type of...
Nobody should receive death threats, absolutely. But the problem I face is that I can't show on this TV show right now, I cannot show any of the footage of the stuff we're talking about because it is deemed inappropriate for this time of the day. I'm literally not legally allowed to show it.
Well, that's because...
However, people are taking babies and toddlers and young children to these shows.
Well, a broadcaster is held to a higher standard.
Shouldn't society be held to that same high standard?
Well, I think it's okay to have the discussion about that, about what is appropriate. You know, I wouldn't do this type of show myself. I don't perform striptease in my show, thank God. You know, I'm a singer, a pianist, a comic. Strangely enough, here I am defending, to some extent, these types of shows because even though I'm not involved with them, and it's not the type of show I do, I think that there's almost a bad faith suspicion that underpins the concern that some people are expressing about it. And that kind of worries me in a more broad societal sense because, you know, I've faced down cancel culture mobs myself. I think that cancel culture gives a free pass to righteous mobs, and that's what this has the flavour of for me. I've
campaigned heavily against cancel culture.
Yeah.
However, I'd be very cautious of anyone saying what you just said because it sounds like gaslighting. We should always be suspicious of people that want to spend time around young children, most especially when they're half nude and or doing some kind of burlesque act. Of course we should be suspicious. And to not be suspicious, I think, would be negligent of us as adults.
What is it that you think that... also interesting, because it's a cabaret show. Obviously, I'm a cabaret artist. Part of cabaret, I work in this drag.
I imagine you perform for over 18s.
Yeah, my shows are in bars and clubs and nightclubs. Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of weddings, and there's sometimes kids at weddings, but the type of show you do at weddings, I'm coming out and singing Celine Dion, The Power of Love, and everybody cries.
Well, just one last question before you go, because there was a drag act that performed, well, actually taught sex ed in a school and taught kids that there were 73 genders, and actually sent a kid out for saying, no, there are 2 genders. Do you think that's appropriate?
Well, the 72 genders thing isn't the church I pray at. I mean, in a liberal society, we're all allowed to have our faith systems. My faith, by the way, is Shania Twain and Celine Dion.
Well, thank you. I've got to move on, but Tom, thank you for sharing your perspective today. It's been very helpful. That was drag queen Vanity Von Glow. We reached out to the Vault Festival, the organisers of the drag show. They gave this response to some of the criticisms they've received. Quote, "We are aware of comments on social media directed at Kaba Baba Rave, part of the 2023 Vault Festival programme. The cabaret show is designed for parents with sensory moments for babies and is a fun and welcoming space for parents and with young babies."
Hi.
How you fighting in the morning?
I just got here, but I can see loads of extremists here already.
Yeah.
And they're on this side of the road.
Yeah.
They're in police uniforms.
Yeah.
What happened to me the other night, you know about this as well, don't you?
Yeah.
I was attacked in Lewisham Police Station. And after having a spinal injury, the police actually neglected me and wanted me to make my own way to a hospital without an ambulance. This is extremism. These people are just misguided.
Yeah.
We need to address these arseholes in uniform. And then we wouldn't have any problems in this country.
Firstly, for the people that say, oh, the babies don't even know what's going on, if you actually look on the website, it's an organisation specifically targeted at babies. For something to be baby sensory, you are obviously going to curate, as they've said, the activities to children. The question is, why do men and women wearing barely any clothing, wearing nipple tassels, wearing bondage gear and stripper heels and thongs, need to be performing for children?
Cost of living.
Sorry.
Why would you need to do that? These are hyper-sexualised environments, and this has got nothing to do with being anti-LGBT.
Yeah.
In fact, it's actually pretty homophobic to suggest that hyper-sexualised themes and caricatures of women through drag acts need to constantly be associated with being gay. That's incorrect.
Amy, can I just say, if I had no money to my name whatsoever, there is a pretty straightforward reason why I wouldn't put a thong on and dance in front of children, and that's because I think that might make me look like a paedophile.
That's absolutely ridiculous.
No, it's not.
That you could actually correlate drag queens to paedophilia. That's what you just did.
Gyrating in front of babies.
A man in a thong.
Gyrating in front of a baby.
And this is the thing with the drag culture. So it's perfectly fine, it's fun. I've been to those sorts of events myself, but these are adult environments that they belong in, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of drag queens would feel extremely uncomfortable with being virtually naked in a thong dancing for toddlers.
Do you not take,
Amy?
right? So I refute how hypersexualised that those 5-second clips can give
We've
the
seen
impression.
more. It's
But
very sexualised.
on the whole, drag queens working with children in the UK are all completely DBS checks. Do a child
DBS check means you've not been caught.
Okay, well then,
so that's a DBS check.
Then,
Nonsense.
I think if there was one example of a drag queen grooming a child for sex, then you might have a leg to stand on with this. But there are 90% of child abuse cases
in America,
are
there was
with
sex
parents
offender
and people that live in their house.
Let's just cut to the chase. I'm a father of 3 children. If anyone took my kids to see that sort of show...
It's not compulsory, Adam.
I would string them up, right? That is disgusting.
To you?
It's perverted. It's depraved.
In your opinion?
No. Would you take your child to that?
Firstly, that's for babies, so it's basically more for the parents. So I remember when my son was
born... Would you take your child to that?
So the local cinema used to do
One second.
Can I answer your question?
Would you take your child to that show?
Any sexualisation of that would go completely over the baby's head.
That is
and they would see colours, makeup and fun and hear the music.
I will go as far to say,
so can I give you
anyone that takes their child to that needs their hard drive checked. You know, it's perverted and depraved.
Yeah, it's completely legal. There's nothing illegal going on.
The thing is,
personal choice.
we don't know.
In your opinion,
we don't know actually if it's completely legal because there are some real safeguarding concerns in those environments.
Now, just sorry to interrupt you, but this is what we're looking at now. So it's a man upside down with a leopard print thong on,
which you might see on the beach.
Bum out. I'm pretty sure you see something.
A beach and that is not comparable. Don't be so ridiculous.
How is it not comparable?
Toddlers,
but number one, they're paid. What are you scared of? What do you think is going to happen to these babies?
You are parents that bring your children along to events that are sexualised. Shame on you. Shame on you. If a child is beaten in this country by their parents, child protection services will come down on them. So if a child is exposed to sexualised content and sexualised acts...
Well, we're here because the people who've come down here, I can see XBMP, I can see EDL, I can see National Front. These people make a habit of they're either beating up black people, Asian people, or anybody. They're the people that attacked us on BLM. So we should know who these people are. And today they've decided they're attacking LGBTQ people, right? And what we should understand is that people, what they're attempting to do is try and find a minority to attack. And what we're saying is we're not going to allow you to do that. And we understand that solidarity and unity are the only 2 weapons that we've got to fight for freedom. And we should know who these people are. These people are the people that are consistently whipping up racism against refugees, blaming black people for all kinds of crime, all this stuff. And that's the reason why we should stand out against them. They are, they're a danger, I think, to a decent political
stable society. And that's why we always have to come out in numbers and never say to them, we're not going back to 1970s. We're little football hooligans like that. I think they're running people out of town and stuff like that. I know who they are. We've seen them, fought them from my teens into my 50s now. And I just think we have to make sure the streets don't belong to thugs. They belong to us. And we have to keep it that way.
All right, Raymond, thank you for the interview. And thank you for keeping up the good fight.
Yeah, let's do it together. If we do it together, it's not, we have to remember, it's our parents' generation that fought for our right to be able to be black with ease, yeah? And what these people are trying to do is remove that right. We should never allow them to do that. If we see a fascist, we should recognise what they want to do and say we're not going to accept that. We have to resist all those things. That's the reason why we organised after Stephen Lawrence. We understood what the BNP and those groups were trying to do after those murders. We have to make sure that doesn't ever happen again. So that's why we have to come out every time, so we're not going back.
Let it stop! Let it stop! How can I be not saying I'm a black Jamaican? How can I be not saying I'm a black Jamaican? How can I be not saying I'm a black Jamaican? How can I be not saying I'm a black Jamaican?
Stuff they're being taught, demonic, mobbed, legalised, legitimised mobs wearing masks. This must change. Narco-communism in the UK.
So what are your views then on this?
It's been recorded?
Yeah.
Sorry, who are you asking? Is it what?
No, independent media. We're independent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is my parish and my church is an inclusive church.
Okay.
That means we believe everybody should be welcome and accepted for who they are and who God made them to be.
Yeah.
Therefore I don't welcome the presence of hate preaching in my parish.
So basically what you're saying is love thy neighbour.
Yeah.
We've all got one life, and I think that I would rather everyone live a happy life than be living in pain and feeling like they have to pretend to be someone else.
Absolutely, absolutely. The gospel teaches us that truth sets us free, and being able to be honest and open about who we are and what's important to us is a gift from God. And being made to conform to something that we're not is not what God intended, or He wouldn't have made us the way we are.
I totally agree. Thank you.
No problem.
Last Saturday, I was totally astonished that there was a demo and a counter-demo that took place in Lewisham, in South London. Hundreds of people in the street in Lewisham demanding that drag queens should continue to have the right to go into our schools to teach youngsters about their view of life. Now, look, we're tolerant about all sorts of human beings, but there is a question as to what is appropriate to be taught to 11 and 12-year-olds. Well, on the Isle of Man, this issue has come to a head in quite a big way over the course of the last few days at the Queen Elizabeth II High School in Peel. And a drag queen appeared there and spoke to 11 and 12-year-olds. And it now seems that parents are standing up and saying they are not prepared to put up with this. Let's find out more by going now straight to the Isle of Man. And I'm going to be joined by Matthew Cheetham, who is a parent at the QE2 school, and I'm going to be joined by Liza Cox, Vice Chair of the Maroon, if I pronounce that correctly, Commissioners, a form of local government on the island. Good evening to both of you. Thank you for coming on the programme. We really want a proper explanation of this, and I'm keen to start, Matthew, with you. You had a child that was put in front of this drag queen. What happened that's offended you?
I think it's the fact that they've gone in without the parents being asked, is it okay? This is what we're teaching. This is on or off the curriculum. We're still unsure. and then for a child to basically say, look, there's two genders, and that's what my mum and dad have told me, and then basically to be removed from the class by the teacher as being seen to be as offensive towards the drag queen, which I think everybody agrees it's not right at all. They're quick to say we offend them, but then when they clearly have offended the adults and the children, it seems they get punished for this. Where we're trying to bring up a level of trust with the children, it's not there.
That's astonishing. For a child of that age to be thrown out of a class for saying, Mum and Dad have taught me there are two genders. And I understand the drag queen taught these children that there are 73 different genders, which I think at 11 years old must be somewhat confusing. And even, I understand, Matthew, some fairly graphic accounts of skin grafts.
Yeah, so essentially there was the year 7, so 10, 11, 12-year-olds, they're being separated into 3 groups. One was to go to the drag queen. The other was to go with, it was a girl at the time. She's gone into the classroom with 5 boys. She didn't really know them, quite a strange group to put together. And they were basically given a sexual toy, so to speak, and shown how to put a condom on. And then the other team or the other group were then shown on one of the teacher's phones how to take a skin graft from an arm for a girl and then to create a penis with it.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. That's all a bit much, isn't it? Yes, I have to say, I can understand, Matthew, why you are upset. I really can. Eliza Cox, it seems that Matthew is far from alone and that a lot of parents have objected to what's happening, and there is a current suspension of these activities within the school. Is this something, I mean, you're involved there with local government, is this something that you think the government of the island are going to do something about?
Yes, I do. We have a couple of really fantastic MHKs, is what we call them over here, Minister of House of Keys. And as soon as they heard that this was happening, they stopped it straight away. They wanted to investigate it fully so they know exactly what's going on and what is happening. And they are doing everything in their power to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and kind of like we welcome the report that they're doing at the moment, and we really look forward to seeing it.
Well, it just goes to show, doesn't it, that when parents actually do, and they're not frightened, and they take a principled stand, and they get together, they can be effective. But Eliza, let me just ask you, how on earth did this, and I think it is poison, frankly, to expose 10, 11, 12-year-olds to this, how did this ever happen in the first place on a place like the Isle of Man?
I don't know, Nigel. This is what the independent review will find out for us, how this actually happened. There was obviously miscommunication along the line, and the independent review will obviously open that up and let us know what happened.
Are the same as everyone else, concerned about all this child grooming, all this all these trainees coming and doing this story time. I've been to a few now. I've been to a couple up here. We went to the Tate Gallery about a month ago, just over. It's worrying the way they want to take all this LGBT crap, which it is. It's just total LGBT crap. And we're here because I've got children and obviously I've got grandchildren. And our friends that I've been campaigning with, that they have kissed themselves. So, it's lovely to see women here with their children, right, supporting this. This is one of the biggest ones I've been to outside this pub, right, and it's nice to see it. And I think people are really waking up and pushing back against the road they want to take us down, right? Because I believe in God, right? And there is only 2 sexes, male and female. And if they want to be trannies, let them be trannies, right? If they want to be gay, let them be gay. I have nothing against that. But it's a fact that they're bringing children into the brainwashing of their gender, of poisoning the world. And this is what it's about. It's not just a country, it's the world. And and lucky enough, I think the majority of people, right, do not agree with this. It's just that they're too frightened to come out because, again, we call Nazi scum, right, racists. Every name in the book what they throw at us. I was out for the Brexit marches and they was doing the same thing then. Ever since then, I thought once Brexit happened, this has stopped. Right, I could stay at home. But no, they're throwing everything else at us now. And it's through desperation. It's desperate because I think the deep state is losing. Right? You know, because you know about the deep state, all this, you know, they're involved in all this. All this lot here are paid. We're here because we're passionate. And we want our life back. Right? And we want God to be taught in schools and not transgender and LGBT, right? Because they've taken the preaching of God out of schools, where they don't do assemblies anymore, where we should pray and sing hymns. They don't do that anymore, right? And that's what it's all about. And we need to get that back in our communities again. Well, that's why, and I'm telling you something now, right? Because I've been following the police a lot. And they have taken a hammering, and they need it because the Met Police is so corrupt. Not just the Met Police, every other, Oxford. I was up in Oxford for that 15-minute thing there, right? And the Met Police and the police there are corrupt. They are the ones that protected whoever killed Dr. David Kelly. They're the ones who protected him, right? He was killed, no doubt about it, because he was going to blow the lid on the weapons of mass destruction, and it all stems back from them. Tony Blair, all of them, they're all paedophiles. All the governments, they've all been taken down. They need to be taken down. Right?
All right. Well, thank you for today, and this will be going out on Tuesday, 7 o'clock. Yeah.
Obviously, there's bits that you won't put in, you might edit it, and that, you know. I don't mind though, because you know what, I can see what's happening around the world.
You want to try and beat us up with my child? You want to try and beat us up with my child? You're not playing with kids, innit? You're not playing with kids. You're not playing with kids. You want to try and beat us up with my child? Huh? You want to try and beat us up with my child?
In Florida to call for a ban on bringing children to drag shows. Well, campaigners, of course, are now calling for the event, which is returning next month for a nationwide tour, to be banned outright. And they don't think this kind of thing would ever fly in Britain. Well, last year, Redbridge Central Library apologised after one drag artist turned up, you're not going to want to miss this one, ladies and gentlemen, dressed as a rainbow monkey bearing a fake bare buttocks and brandishing an actual sex toy. Sherry, I'll start with you. Thank you very much, especially for coming into the studio, sashaying your way in, some would say. But
you are very welcome.
Yes, so look, should people like you be performing in front of kids?
I think that's a really silly question, to be honest.
I get that a lot.
Like, when you mention just about the monkey and the person being dressed as a monkey, that's completely irrelevant to the whole picture. I mean, you didn't mention anything about children actually getting something good from drag.
What did they get from it?
Well, I've just done a tour over the last 3 months and met thousands of children under 18, and all of them were there and absolutely loved every second of it. And their parents were there and they enjoyed every moment and said how much it helped their children feel like they could become themselves a bit more. There's so much good in it, and I think it's difficult to just focus on the bad. We can't just pick out a minority inside a minority and make it the whole thing, you know?
No, hey, fair enough, Laura. I'll lob it over your way now. Laura Dodsworth, of course, author and journalist. Look, some of the videos coming out of Dallas are shocking, but I do believe that what Cherry's saying there is that's an extreme example, and we shouldn't be focusing on those things.
Yeah, no, it is an extreme example, and I don't think we can confuse that really bizarre scene of children going to quite an explicit drag show in an adult venue with libraries and education. I think the question to ask is, do drag queens have a vital role in helping children learn to read and love stories? Because while children might be able to get something from drag, Cherry's just talked about some benefits. Is reading, our libraries, the place? Is there a different format? I mean, I think overall as a society, we are very open-minded and tolerant. And I'm all in favour of encouraging people to be open-minded about gender non-conformity and different sexualities. And, you know, lots of people take their kids to the pantomime at Christmas, and, you know, the Danes are, I guess, a type of drag queen. Sorry if I'm getting that wrong, but, you know, that's kind of how it looks to me. There's a similarity there. But drag queens, you know, at least the ones I've seen, that it feels a bit more like it's kind of evening entertainment. There can be innuendo and adult themes, and also there's, you know, elements of the costume that you could arguably say present kind of a sexist view of womanhood. I think there's a lot of confusion at the moment about sex and gender, and I think maybe when it comes to teach children to read, perhaps it could just be about the basics of reading.
Laura,
absolutely. Can I just say one more thing? Can I just say one more thing, Patrick? Because you mentioned the guy that was referred to as the rainbow dildo butt monkey.
Yes, I remember. I think we all remember that guy. Yes.
But there was also another example. Glencoates Primary School in Paisley in Scotland invited a drag queen called Flo Job to read stories to children. And while I don't think anything inappropriate happened in the classroom, actually this is somebody who has a very sexual social media feed, and that was all over the media too. So things do go wrong.
All right, Laura, I'm going to come back to you, Laura. Laura, I'm going to come back to you. Absolutely fair enough. I know there's a lot to get stuck into here. Cherry, thank you for sitting there so patiently with that. There's a lot for you to come back on there. I suppose, can I just ask this? Now, this is certainly not something I mean myself. I'm just asking this genuinely because this is what a lot of people might say. Some people might say is it forcing some kind of homosexuality onto kids or something like that? That's one of the things that a lot of the more conservative, especially Americans, would say.
I think that's an absolute outrageous idea, to be honest, that drag forces people to be a homosexual. And like she's just mentioned, sex and gender are completely different things. They really are. Sex, like myself, I can only go off my own opinions, but I'm a man. That's my sex. But my gender is so fluid, and sometimes I feel more feminine, sometimes I feel more masculine. And I think drag allows people, and especially children when they're growing up, to really just help them navigate it all, because we are being thrown things like phrases, we're being thrown new words constantly all the time. And I think, like, I personally, I'm also a qualified mental health nurse.
Right.
So I wouldn't class myself as a sexual person in drag. I just use it for artistic reasons. I use it for self-expression, to play with gender, to really, like, question what we think is, like how we should be in a society. So children ask me all the time, like, things about mental health because of my mental health background, and I'm more than happy to talk to them about that.
Have you ever had any bad reactions, Cherry?
No, I haven't. No, not from children or parents that I've been with, but I have heard from other people that they have had bad reactions. I've obviously had homophobic attacks and all stuff like that, because it is very common still, whether we like to admit it or not.
Yeah, Laura, OK. You mentioned something there that I thought was interesting. I'd not given it too much thought myself, I think, for obvious reasons. But you said that potentially sometimes there are elements of drag that could be deemed offensive to women. What is that? Is it over-stereotypical in your view? What do you mean by that?
I think that, you know, there's so many different ways to take it. It's fun, it's a performance, it's a kind of very heightened expression of a particular type of femininity. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily offensive to women, but it does definitely play into gender stereotypes in a way that is sexism. So I think that the idea of using drag to talk about gender non-conformity is useful, but you can't then also ignore the fact that it plays into sexist stereotypes. I just think it's all really complex. And I'm not sure that the time when you're encouraging children to learn to read and to love stories is the time to also bring in all of this complexity. I do want to very much echo what Cherry just said. I don't think children seeing drag queens is going to make them go gay. You know, your sexuality is your sexuality. But there is an awful lot of confusion about gender. You know, there's kind of crazy stuff going on in schools at the moment, you know, to do with toilets and changing rooms and, you know,
all sorts of names, etc. Yeah, gosh.
Yeah, and you can't really escape a lot of the furore about transgender ideology. And I just think perhaps story time should be kept simple. And I think a lot of people don't really see the need for this. I think we have to be careful because there are examples where things have happened that are just inappropriate. I mean, it's kind of horrific to think about somebody waving a Technicolor dildo around in a library to children who went along for a story time. You know, some serious mistakes were made. And while those are isolated examples, we've seen more of it in the United States. I think it's an American export we want to be a little bit careful about.
OK. I'm presuming that, Cherry, if it was banned here in this country, I suppose, any kind of drag out towards kids, would you protest over that ban, just quickly?
Would I protest? I'd share my personal opinion.
OK. All right. Look, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate both of you coming on the show. Cherry Valentine there, of course, star of the hit TV show RuPaul's Drag Race UK, and journalist Laura Dodsworth. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
Come and remove us then. If it's your streets, come and remove us then.
What makes a fascist? I mean, I think hate is a big thing that plays into that. I think I would not say ignorance, because you can ignorance, and if someone wants to listen to that other opinion, then they're not a fascist. But I think when someone doesn't want to listen to everyone here and doesn't want to participate in a way of a democratic way of thinking, then I think you are fascist. And I think the way in which they incite hatred and they make us feel unsafe, they just the climate in which they work of dividing and conquer and rule, I think that is what makes you a fascist.
Put up your hands as you like twerking in front of young children. Hands up.
You say I'm not a real vicar. That's not a real woman. You say you're here to fight against racism. You shout down black people who are trying to talk. What you want to do is shout because you can't listen to the truth. You shout out the word Nazi, yet you're calling a gay Jew a Nazi. I'm queer and I'm not going anywhere. I was watching drag shows before most of you were born. I don't know about her because she looks very old. This is not about drag queens. This is about the sexualization of children. Got flags saying socialist worker, a somewhat oxymoron, because no socialist I've ever met has ever worked.
Listen, we are here as the people of Britain. We are here because children are under threat. Children Protection Services should never allow a grown man to gyrate in front of a child. The Child Protection Services should never allow a grown man who is semi-naked to dance in front of a child. And I'm not sure how you can stand for that too.
Drag Queen Story Hour, UK staff and associated personnel must not engage in sexual activity with anyone under the age of 18. They should not sexually abuse or exploit children. They should not subject child to physical, emotional or psychological abuse or neglect. I don't have to warn my staff that. I don't have to warn my staff not to sexually abuse a child in my policies. So why is that in the drag storytime policy?
What I am is a former British soldier who's standing up for children's rights to stop you perverts from interfering with them in these closed off paid events where you dance around in thongs with your boobs hanging out.
You castrate them, you want to physically castrate them, you want to traumatize them so they become just like you, a bunch of degenerates. I stand against you, and I stand against you to the day I die. There is not a time on this earth where normal people have said it's okay to groom kids.
But if someone's like trying to sexualise a child, you've got to stand up. That's what we're here. I'm standing up for that. I'm not standing up against men dressing up
a lot of extremism myself.
Do you want one of our signs?
Sexual on those people. Going and sexualising children. Brilliant. It's the truth.
So if I ask you what Gender Recognition Act 2004 Section 22 is, you wouldn't be able to tell me, would you? Not on top of my head. No, because you haven't actually got up to speed with my rights under the law.
Man and there's a woman.
Well, that's what I am.
filter, and she is the Queen of New York. Yeah!
Loving Creator, Holy One, and Diva of the world, may your word shine upon us like glitter under the stage lights. May it pop like a death drop in a crowded, dingy basement. We confess that we have demanded too much from the earth. We confess to the sins of racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, fatphobia, American imperialism, and Christian supremacy. We confess that sometimes we forget that all life is connected.
We want to make sure that everyone knows that all are welcome here.
Pride isn't a place, it's a feeling of being proud. The pride flag represents being proud of who you are.
We fly to show pride and support of our LGBTQ friends.
Let's start with gay. Someone who's gay is attracted to people who are the same gender as them, like a man who's attracted to a man, or a lady who's attracted to a lady.
I am thrilled beyond thrilled to be presenting to you local drag legends.
So, as we sit here in the Honor of Pub, just thinking about the event that we both attended and what we were told before the event and what actually we experienced outside these doors on Saturday. And just want to get your views.
It's nuts. My views.
Yeah.
My views. My views. Well, you know what I've been through. Trans woman, almost dead 4 times, arrested constantly, beaten up by police officers, and all of a sudden there's a narrative to protect drag queens. And technically speaking, drag queens don't even exist under the law. Something tells me that this is not protecting LGBT. This is a drive, a narrative to undermine it further. I think, do you know, I believe that more so than anything else, especially with some of the people that were at that protest. Didn't you feel the same?
I think when you look at what actually happened on the day, I was confused to what people were actually out here fighting for.
I was confused as well.
Yeah.
I stood behind the crowd, the counter-protesters, and I was looking at the protesters' signs.
Yeah.
And obviously no one reads, because technically speaking, the protesters were holding signs, billboards saying ban sexualization and exploitation of children.
Yeah.
So the counter-protesters were protesting over what they were protesting about.
Yeah.
And should we not all be protecting our children?
Yeah. What I did find strange was you arrived and you were made to seem like a troublemaker. I'm just going to call it out as it is. And people were frightened that you would be attacked if you went across the road. And surprisingly, when you went across the road to speak to the people across the road, they actually agreed with some of the points that you made.
Yeah. You see, this is, if you look at the whole country, everyone's protesting. No one actually thinks rationally anymore about anything. And let's face it, if someone's unhappy, you can either attack them or ask them what's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's what I was asking, basically, with a bit of banter and everything else thrown in, because it's that day of protest. I was asking, what is the rationale? What's the point behind all this?
And I think that's something that, even for me, I learned something that day, because a lot of them across the road were saying that they support LGBT. They were just worried that children are going to be sexualized or, worst case scenario, molested. And then it turned into something else again, where we had a music video being shot as well at the same time.
There was a music video being shot?
Yeah, did you miss it? There was a music video being run along the line. The young children were in the front and they were singing. Yeah.
I didn't see this.
Yeah, there was a music
I was
video.
more concentrated and fixated on the biggest extremist organisation that was at the protest.
Who was that?
The police.
Okay.
It's for God. You know, you look at, say, for instance, the amount of prosecutions that have been for any crimes committed against trans people is zero, but the crimes committed are up through the roof.
Yeah.
LGBT, there's no crimes being prosecuted.
Yeah.
And so I was standing out there. It was actually quite interesting, trying to explain to people how the biggest extremist group that was there that we should be protesting against were the police.
I did see you at one stage talking to a police officer. I think he was an inspector, and he was having a long chat with you. What was you talking to him about?
Technically speaking, the protesters, although they may have valid points, I was explaining to them that technically speaking, they were trying to stop a drag queen performance.
Yeah.
And the way I was looking at it was that, technically speaking, they were trying to stop someone from earning money for reading stories to children. All the parents were there as well, by the way. All the parents go upstairs and they accompany their children. And obviously there's two things here that were very strange. One, that the protesters think that they should be able to override parental consent of other people that they don't know. And secondly was that if they consider that they can come down here and stop someone from working, that actually is a criminal act. It's not a protest.
I think that's something new where we're now looking at it as you're preventing someone from making a living. It was more looked at as a free business and grooming, from what I could see, where no one was looking at it as you're disrupting someone from their work. It was more you're trying to corrupt our kids.
Remember, what they actually did was they had someone had leaked, because from my understanding, and I'm not fully up to speed on this, but this pub actually has adult drag queen performances.
So there's two separate things.
Yeah. So
you've got adult drag queen performances.
They have performances downstairs on Fridays or something.
Okay. So where we are.
Yeah. So what actually happened? Someone had videoed.
Oh look, there's a flyer there.
Someone had videoed the drag queens performing in front of adults.
Okay.
And then said it was the children's thing.
Okay.
So people have misappropriated all the videos, saying it was in front of children, whereas they have adult performances.
But someone might have just had their children with them.
What, for an adult performance? They
No,
wouldn't be allowed
the video they've been circulating had a little girl by the door. What a day we've had outside the On the Rock pub. Totally different show for you today, people. Where we've come down, we've had two fractions gathered One travelling the motorway 3 hours from Birmingham to get their views heard. Turning Point. Their views were they're against drag queens reading to children because they believe that it's going to further indoctrinate children to want to dress up in clothes and also be twerking. And I think they were more concerned about the twerking. And also some of the chants that we heard were, well, don't think we want to repeat them on here, but it was about abusing and troubling children. That was their biggest concerns. We had army veterans coming down. We had people that have been in high positions within government also coming down and supporting some of the sides on what their thoughts were. We need to also think about, before we get into it, what were the thoughts of the On Rock pub when they decided that they would invite the drag queens down to read story time to the young children. I've seen some of the behind the scenes footage. Because one thing I must mention, when these story times going on, unless you're a parent, you're not allowed inside. Because we tried to get inside and see behind the scenes and the security told us, no, you won't be coming in. But what did happen? One of the drag queens did come outside and give a speech and introduced herself or himself to the people in the community and said, look, we're harmless, we're just here trying to help the literacy levels. Would we agree with reading books to young children dressed up in fancy dress and makeup, helping the literacy levels? Who would know? We might have to then bring them into prisons, because as we're seeing, ministers have brought to our attention that the literacy levels within the prison system is so low that they're now asking people to do pair-on-pair reading. And that is something that I can say from working in the prison estate. There's a lot of prisoners within the prison establishment that are unable to read. And a lot of them could only smell the paper, hoping that their girlfriend would have sprayed a bit of cologne on there to get them going and keep them through their time. So now we then had another fraction, which was the biggest fraction, and we had the biggest surprise of the day from the people that were for the drag queens. They were marching peacefully, and out of nowhere they charged at the people from Turning Point very aggressively, and I was shocked. I was thinking, aren't you meant to be the peaceful side? Aren't they meant to be the football hooligans and from Millwall and other clubs and EDL? And we heard all sorts of different chants of people that were on the other side. But one thing that did surprise me when we did go and speak to the people from Turning Point, they made it clear that they wasn't against LGBT at all. Some of them even went as far as saying we would actually stand across the road with them. But what we're against is indoctrinating young children. As you can see behind us, some of them are in the pub, chairs in because they think they've had a success. And we heard someone say just now, we've run Turning Point out of town. Is that true? Or did they peacefully leave? We also spoke to a vicar this morning, which took me back at first, where the vicar said, he had a sign there that said, real vicars wear skirts. And the vicar was standing on the side where he said that he agreed with the people coming dressed up in drag and reading to young children. And he also supports LGBT because he believes that people should have freedom of life and how they live their life. I also believe that everyone should have the freedom to live their life as they please. Welcome to the Gwenton Show. Thank you for listening.